During the next 4 weeks, while many of our NBC play-by-play men are in Korea, some of the legends of broadcasting will be calling the games for us. Names like Kirk Gowdy, Al DeRogatis, Chuck Thompson, Merle Harmon. Remember Ray Scott at CBS? His style was the simplest. Star, Horning, first down. Here are some of the legends of the game then and now.
They don't make them like they used to.
Former Giant Al DeRogatis.
Could be. I think if the New York Jets are to win this football game today, Kurt, I firmly believe.
He called 3 Super Bowls. Ray Scott, 50 years in broadcasting. 4 Super Bowls for him.
How important is special to the Chiefs game without some injuries? Quarterback Cliff Stouter.
Kurt Gowdy, 7 Super Bowls, 14 World Series.
You know, Weave Eubank says his Jets are better than
the only sportscaster to win the Peabody Award. The Lombardi years. Was it an era very special that will never be duplicated?
Lenny was the greatest motivator I've ever known in any sport. I winced at his methods at times, as we all did who knew him well. But by the same token, I think he had the faculty of getting the most out of more players than any coach of his era.
The Ice Bowl probably ranks as one of the 2 or 3 most famous sporting events or football games ever played.
That game and the game the year before, the same 2 teams on one of the most miserable playing fields ever, and some of the most terrible weather I've ever known. And Green Bay had the ball in the closing seconds and did score.
This is an interesting interview for me, and I'm sure you've heard this many times. But for years of my childhood, I mean, all I remember is Horning, Taylor, Nitschke, and that was the announcer speaking.
Ray was really synonymous with the Packers. Lombardi. Anytime I think of Ray Scott, I think of the Green Bay Packer great teams in Lombardi.
Ray, as we all know, is in the category with the Kurt Gowdys and the Embergs and that ilk. He is low-keyed, he's quiet, and he lets the game do the talking.
I guess I think of myself with a young AFL growing up, and the excitement as it got better each year. In the first Super Bowl, Ray did the play-by-play on CBS, and I did it on NBC. And
Super Bowl III.
Everybody said if it's another one-sided game, there'll be no more Super Bowl. Who's going to pay money for a game you know is going to be one-sided? So I turned to DeRogatis and I said, Al, how do you see this game?
If the New York Jets are to win this football game today, Kurt, I firmly believe they must get 100 to 130 yards on the ground, 9 to 13 first downs. If they do that, this is going to be a whale of a football game.
Now, that's a gutty call. Matt Snell alone made over 100 yards.
Kurt Gowdy makes it sound like you made the biggest, greatest prediction of all time.
I had been doing the AFL all year with Gowdy, obviously, and I knew they were playing some top-flight football. So going in, I had the feeling they were going to shut them out.
So you think the good old days were okay, but they're pretty good now?
The good old days are okay, but they were the good old days, and I believe everything is better.
Although all 3 think of themselves as semi-retired, they are busier than most people. Ray has been doing Arizona State and Kansas City Chiefs games and has been sports anchor at KTVK in Phoenix.
Quarterback Cliff Stouter, a very painful hip pointer.
I'm about semi-retired as a sports announcer now, and I'm trying to get all the fishing in. I missed, but any chance I can, and I made a lot of films, appeared in films to try and improve fishing game in America. I do all I can of that. I think I owe it back.
Kurt lobbies for wilderness conservation and is a favorite son in his native Wyoming, where they have named a recreation area the Kurt Gowdy State Park. He is an active member of the conservationist group Trout Unlimited and was keynote speaker at their convention this year. Last season, he called play-by-play for the Patriots, and he still had time to run his radio stations.
Probably the thing that I enjoy most is playing golf. I probably play 4 times a week. Unfortunately, it hasn't helped my golf too much. I haven't really gotten too much better. I do a great deal of fishing, an enormous amount of reading. I love walking on the beach and enjoy very much spending my winters in Florida. Love being with my family, my grandchildren, our new twins. So that's about it.
Kurt, coming back and doing these games, how do you feel about reaching out to a brand new generation of young fans?
I look forward to coming back and doing the games just to be working with the guys again.
Jack Craig wrote in the Sporting News a few weeks ago something to the effect, I wonder if today's audience will accept the way Ray Scott does a game. He was referring to my doing these games for NBC. And quite frankly, I said to myself, why should I change?
When Bart Starr sneaked over for that winning touchdown against Dallas in 1967, Ray Scott was not at the mic. He had called the first half. I asked him if he would have yelled, "The Packers are going to the Super Bowl." He said he probably would have called Starr touchdown. We are happy to have the legends back on the air. We hope you enjoy listening to them all over again. And joining us in the studio, another legend, Lindsey Nelson, 26 Cotton Bowls. You worked with Ray Scott in the 1960 championship game.
Absolutely, on NBC. It was the Philadelphia Eagles going against the Green Bay Packers. The Eagles won with Van Brocklin. It was the only playoff game that Vince Lombardi ever lost.
You must have come across as a raving chatterbox next to Ray Scott.
Well, I was, because Ray was not given to wordy dissertations. He just laid it out there, and working with him, you tended to sort of do it his way. I talked a lot less when I worked with Ray.
We'll continue with Lindsey Nelson, and Gail Sierens will be joining us as well. And we're all kind of disappointed that Lindsey wore a blue blazer today instead of one of his wild baseball jackets, but I guess that's the one he donated to the Hall of Fame in Cooperstown. We'll be back with more NFL Live in just a minute.
Last year, half of our sales were of products that didn't even exist 5 years ago, like our pacemaker that changes speed to meet demands on the heart. We're Siemens USA, leaders in medical engineering, telecommunications, energy, automation, and electronics, with 23 research and development centers coast to coast, helping to build a stronger, more productive America. We are Siemens USA.
We used to sell a Volkswagen for people with more sense than money. We still do. Before you buy a car, test drive a Volkswagen Fox at your local Volkswagen dealer.
Tell me, is he still upset?
Well, you know Dad.
Never really understood why I joined. I mean, maybe you'll go straight to college. But I had to prove something to myself first.
The GI Bill and Army College Fund. If you qualify, you can get more than $25,000 for college and an edge on life.
Do you think Dad will ever come around? Dad?
They say a picture is worth 1,000 words.
I'm with the best shot of my life! You'd laugh if I hadn't pulled you down.
And they took 1,000 pictures.
Just like the news. This is the news!
In honor of Platoon and Good Morning Vietnam.
Commie press.
Comes an unforgettable picture.
Is there any way to treat an award-winning photographer?
Shooter, tonight.
Gail Sierens made broadcast history last December 27th, 1987. She became the first woman to do play-by-play of an NFL game when she called the Kansas City-Seattle game for NBC Sports.
And he may be all the way. Yes, he is. Touchdown, Kansas City.
Welcome, Gail. You're now the first woman play-by-play person to do NFL Live, so double history.
There you go.
Right.
It's been an interesting day for me to have the opportunity to talk with Lindsey, and I'm curious to know, from your vantage point now, when you listen to today's modern-day, new breed of broadcasters, do you cringe sometimes, Lindsey?
Well, sometimes I cringe, but see, they're so much busier than we were, because now you have a telex in your ear and you're hearing from 2 or 3 or 4 people. We didn't have that. We just went out and did the ball game, and there it was.
I think the toughest job for a broadcaster, though, is to take that uninteresting, unexciting game and keep it interesting and high energy right till the end. How do you do that?
Well, you do that by practice, 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 and you just keep doing it, and you're exactly right. That's the whole thing that's required. That if the game sags, be sure you don't.
Now, here's a technique I don't know that I will ever have, but something that I always find interesting about ball players and broadcasters. They forget anniversaries. They forget Mother's Day. They never forget a play from any football game that they ever announced. Have you ever forgotten one? Could you recall just about any game you've done?
Almost. They come back. They're back there somewhere. Sometimes it takes a little while to crank them up, but they're there.
Were the good old days the good old days in broadcasting, or is it better now?
Because you realized that you were in a profession that was progressing. And so everything was new, and maybe this week there's something brand new, and you went out to the stadium knowing that today may be something that's never happened before.
The networks are oftentimes criticized for show business aspects in television and with play-by-play. Do you feel that's justified?
Absolutely, because it is showbiz. After all, when you've got that many people and that big an audience out there, it's showbiz, believe me.
I'm curious about Gail's experiences in doing that game last year. The crush of publicity was nationwide. What were the pressures like for you in that broadcast booth?
It was much more difficult leading up to that game, going up to the kickoff, than the actual game itself. And maybe that was good. Maybe it was good that I had a lot of other things to think about. So when it finally came time to do the game, you put the headsets on, and you know what you know. You've studied, you've put your notes together, you've got your charts ready. And I think maybe it kept me from thinking too much about the game, to have to deal with all those other things.
What was the response like from the public? Because I know how critics can be. I'm sure some people said, boy, well, what's a woman's voice doing there?
Most of the critics were pretty kind. I got a few phone calls that weren't so kind, and I got a couple of letters that weren't so nice, but I got many more that were. And so it was encouraging.
How about a woman in your day, Lindsay, in the early days? Would they have accepted that in the broadcast booth?
Not at all. Really, there was never any reason why. Now then, we used to talk among ourselves and say, there's no reason why we shouldn't have a woman in here. But at that time, it just wasn't done, that's all.
Well, times have changed. We thank you for joining us, and all the best. We've always enjoyed listening, and thanks for being with us. All right, Gail, we will continue on NFL Live throughout the day. At halftime, we'll have highlights, scores. We'll continue to update the pennant races as well in baseball. Thanks for joining us on this edition of NFL Live. We'll see you a bit later on, everybody.
Come home to the best in the world. Evenings beginning September 17th. The Olympics are live and only on NBC.
Veterans, have you called yet for your free copy of the 1988 Guide to Veterans Benefits? I'm Roger Staubach. Are you personally up to date on all the government benefits you're entitled to collect? Loans, help with education, medical and dental benefits. This valuable publication tells you who's eligible, what's available, where to apply. If you're a veteran, call this toll-free number right now. You'll get this 1988 Guide to Veterans Benefits absolutely free. You'll also receive information on a non-government life insurance program available to veterans and their families. If you're a veteran, there's no cost and no obligation. All it takes is one quick phone call. You owe it to yourself and your family to get the facts. So call now.
Veterans of all ages call 1-800-345-9300. The benefit guide and life insurance information are free, and so is the call. That's 1-800-345-9300. 1-800-345-9300. Call now.
You want to treat people with respect, and you know, if they can depend that you're going to be there to give them a clean bleach bottle or talk to them a little bit. AIDS affects every single one of us. I'm a white middle-class mother. It affects me because I'm not married. It affects me because I have adolescent children. I really believe that I have been given a special gift. You have to give back something when you've been given a lot.